Welcome, everybody, to Tammy Tuesday, the podcast of life, love, and purpose. I'm excited you're here, and I cannot wait to share my guest with you today. He happens to be my husband of 22 years, the famous Eric Fellows, who I've referenced many times on this podcast. I'm so happy you're here, honey. Thank you for being with me.
I am super excited to be here with you. I would rather not be anywhere else except on your birthday.
Yes, today is my birthday, so it's a special day. In fact, when we talked about this, we were like, what are we going to do on my birthday? And he said, how about I come on your podcast? And I was like, oh, hell yeah.
Oh, yeah, right?
Yeah.
What better day?
I know.
I love it. I've spent more than 25 of them with you now. Yeah,
you have. Well, yeah. How long has it been? Gosh, we got together in 1999.
That's right.
Dang, that's crazy. That sounds weird.
It does. Well, to anybody out there, that was like a whole nother decade. Yeah.
A lot more than that.
Yep.
But yes, it's been quite a ride. And not only are you my husband, and we're gonna plug this more at the end, but you also are the owner and founder of AZ Fellows Real Estate.
Oh, yes, that's right. So this podcast is really just going to be a plug for AZ Fellows Real Estate. So I'm really excited about that. I'm excited to talk about real estate all afternoon. I can't wait.
No, that's not what this is going to be.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
But I am excited to dive into our conversation. I think it's going to be really fun. And like I said, a very long time coming, because I've had many conversations and have referenced you. I often refer to you as my muse.
I'm going to have to Google that. Yeah.
So the reason I feel that you're my muse is because this podcast is a perfect example of this. So yes. Tammy Tuesday, let's talk about that for a second, because this had a lot to do with your influence on how this podcast came to be and why it was called Tammy Tuesday. Because when I finally made the call to take a day for myself, which I desperately needed at the time, this was back in 2021, and you said, I'm going to buy the domain, TammyTuesday.com. And I laughed. I really thought it was funny. I thought it was a joke. It was sweet. You gave it to me on Mother's Day. It was really awesome.
It was standard operating procedure for me. I buy domains.
That's true. You are the domain king.
On the fly. If anybody needs one, I have quite a lot.
That is actually one of your staples, is when somebody says something catchy or that relates to them in some way, like a name you call someone, you instantly buy the domain and you send it to them and say, hey, look what I have for you. Well, I think it's cool.
Well, typically what I'll do is I'll buy it unbeknownst to them, and then I'll direct it. I'll point it at their own website, like their own landing page, and then mask it. So it'll come through, as Tammy Tuesday, and it'll go right to your page, and people... they always like that.
Well, at the time, I remember when you bought TammyTuesday.com, it was directed at my magazine website at the time, because that was
well, you got to point it somewhere. So,
yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was such a sweet gesture. And then when I decided to really, once I had sold the business, and I was like, okay, I think it's time to do the podcast. And I was talking to you, I said, I don't know what I'm going to call this thing. And you're like, well, I think you have to call it Tammy Tuesday. That was never my thought. Yeah. It really was never my thought. And then I thought, I think you're right, because the whole reason behind it was me doing something that I love for me. And that was what the whole Tammy Tuesday mission was, even though at the time I didn't see it as this brand, which it's kind of become, at least through the podcast.
Great brand, by the way. Great brand.
So I want to thank you for that, because that was really something that I just didn't see, and you did, and you had the vision around it, and I'm grateful for it. So thank you for that.
Well, you're very welcome. I mean, are we just going to go straight to tears on this one?
Well, a lot of people do shed tears on this podcast.
That is true. And
including me.
Yes. And I think the mark of any good, strong man is you can shed a tear very easily. So it might happen. True. We're not sure, but we haven't talked about the kids yet. So that
is true. I want to talk about the kids, because another hallmark of you is that when we meet anybody, that is one of the very first things out of your mouth, because you are so proud to be a dad. And you always say, we have 4 boys, and it's within the first sentence or two when we meet people typically, because it's just part of who you are and what you love.
I think it's really more a part of who we all are. Honestly, we're creators. And I view myself as a creator. I think I created my entire environment around you and I when we met. I could see my future. I mean, we'll get into all that. I'm sure you're going to ask me about that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the boys, they get a kick out of it. They love it. They hate it. But I will, when we remind them that we are their creator, we're very humble with, it is hard to talk with your hands with this. Hello. So, we always remind them, we're like, listen, guys, we are your creator. And they're like, okay, yes. And very proud of everything about it. And they're great human beings. They've all turned out fantastic, and they've all had free will. We've had influence with them, of course, but I mean, you lead with what you've created, I think, when you're talking with someone. It's like, you're only in contact with so many people on the planet, physical contact. Podcasts like this go out into the multiverse, right? So, yeah, it's just natural. That's a very natural flow for me. Because I think it also identifies with other people. Most people we know have children. Rarely do we run into anybody who's had 4.
That's true.
That's like unheard of.
Yeah.
It really is, like, to go that big. I mean, my brother had, 3, and I've got cousins and family that love that number 3. But
we almost quit at 3. Remember that?
Well, but our goal,
but that never was going to happen.
But to be fair to Brody, is we always wanted 4. Mm-hmm. We always wanted 4.
For real, when we first met.
Exactly. And being a creator, you're like, okay, now this thing's evolved. Now we have 3. We've bitten off quite a lot. You're giving a lot of yourself. Every mother out there knows this, and any good husband or father knows this. We had to pause for a second. And we can prove that because if you look at the ages of our kids.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So we paused for just a moment, caught our breath, really.
Yeah.
And then was like, okay. And then you started kissing me, and then the rest,
it's always me starting it, always.
Every time. But this is PG-13, right?
It's whatever you want it to be, honey.
We're going to do Tammy Fellows After Dark another time. We'll do that.
XXX, Tammy Tuesday.
You said it, not me. Not me. That would get a lot of clicks just to see what the hell it was. Yeah. But anyhow, it's just a natural. I think it's just very natural for me to say, a lot of these things we're going to talk about, you and I discuss these things all the time. So I think it's more fun to put it on tape and then let other people kind of dissect it and figure out kind of how we influence each other. That's what I'm excited about. For people that know and love you, to hear these stories, and then they realize, oh, she has a partner, right? Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about that specifically because, and I have talked about this openly on this podcast, when I woke up into my spiritual journey and really started very deeply into that, which I've always been on a spiritual journey because we're spiritual beings.
Oh, I love this.
But when things were just happening and I couldn't even understand what all was happening because I was just so open to receiving all the things. And I finally said, I got to just tell you what's been going on with me because I don't understand it myself, but it's really exciting and I can't look back, and it's something that I now know that I can't unknow. And I'll never forget the day I came back from a business trip, and then we had a photo shoot with our other previous business that we had together. And I was completely overwhelmed energetically because I had been exposed to a lot of people. And at that time, energy was just something that flowed heavy, and I didn't understand my boundaries around that. So it was overwhelming to me, and I came back and I was just kind of a mess. And we went to lunch just to catch up, frankly, because we hadn't really spent time together alone for several days. And I just started crying, and I'm like, I just have to tell you what's been going on. And you're like, let's get out of here. So we left the restaurant. We drove to this really cool waterfront right in our neighborhood where we lived, and you let me just cry. And I cried and cried and cried because
Women can do that from time to time, just so you know.
I was scared to tell you what had been going on with me because, frankly, a lot of it was really weird and unusual, and I didn't even know what was happening. And so you let me have my moment, and I just kind of cried and had my release, and then I just shared everything that had been happening. And
my first words.
Your first words were, "There you are." I knew you'd show up.
We've discussed this. I always just viewed that as you had just forgotten. You had just forgotten a little bit.
Truly.
Because when we first came together, when we were just friends, dating, I had explained to you, I had read the Bible cover to cover. I already had a very huge spiritual awakening.
Yes.
that my father, Rick Fellows and Marlos Fellows, had a strong influence on. And I had always been able to kind of see my destiny in front of me. And when I met you, I could, you can't put it into words. Like, I didn't, believe in love at first sight. I never understood why my parents were so excited when the garbage got picked up. I'll never forget this. They came in the house and high-fived each other, and I think I was 18 or 19, and I'm like, you guys, that is so lame. Do we not understand this now?
Totally.
It's a big deal. You can't have 2 recycle bins completely full, especially the day after Christmas. True story. And then when they get picked up, you're just like, you're hugging each other. There's probably tears. But you get it.
It's a big moment.
So the point in using that story is because you do evolve and you start to realize, oh my gosh, I think there is love at first sight. So there was always a knowing with you, and I knew it when I met you. You weren't quite there. Your upbringing was in the Mormon church, and I absolutely love all religions. They're all fantastic. But the point was, I saw it that moment way in my future, and I was just merely waiting.
What happened? Talk about it, because I want to hear your perspective of the story.
Well, my perspective was that when we first met, I had explained to you about my famous line, I mean, that we've known forever, is when Tammy and I were dating, I told her my life philosophy in a nutshell at that time, right? I was young. I said, here it is. And I remember you leaned in. I think we were at Applebee's. Mm-hmm. And you leaned in, and I go, I can't get you into heaven. And you're like, oh, religious thing. And I said, no, it's more of a philosophical, meaning that I'm on my own life journey, and I see you're on your own life journey too. I mean, we have a marriage certificate that says we're married, but you and I both know we're on our own journeys in life, and we're here to help each other. I mean, love all, serve all is a real thing. And so when I said that to you, I remember like a little bit of a light. You found that, I think you found that attractive. I think you found like, oh, this man wants me to kind of be my own person and make my own discoveries. He's not going to try to guide me, I definitely help influence. I suppose that's a fair reference, but right. Yeah, I always saw it. I mean, I saw it. Like I said, love at first sight, never believed in it, did believe in it, wanted to, but then when it happens to you, it just opens your mind up to all kinds of other possibilities. Like, what else is there that I'm perhaps not? So I think throughout our relationship, we've had this. I mean, you should see the books we have at our house. I have a degree in psychology, and I still have books in philosophy that I had in college. I still kept those. I didn't keep any of my economics books or sociology books, mostly because they were too big and heavy. But truthfully, I always knew it, I suppose. So when we were sitting there and you were telling me about this awakening, the best way I can describe it, and I've always stuck by this, is that I was just sitting there going, there you are. Yeah, I knew you were coming. I knew you were going to come over this way. And now I'm following you. I'm kind of on your coattails with everything that you brought into our existence, and literally the literature, the books, the experiences, obviously the meditations, all of those things are such fantastic influences on all 4 of our boys, on our life. So there you are, and here we are.
Well, it was exciting. It was beyond exciting when you received it that way, because when people go through this, and people listening can understand this, because as we do wake up into a bigger understanding of what we are, and that we are here to create, and we're just beings of light and love. And when you start to have experiences, metaphysical experiences and visions and psychic things happen, and things just start to happen. And when not everybody is in tune to receive those things, and so when you start to share those things with people that you love, it can be scary, because a lot of times people look at you like you're crazy. And I didn't know when I shared those things what your response was going to be. And it was, all right, she found her path. Like, here we go. and you were in. And you being in was the most exciting thing I could ever hear, because so many scenarios. I can't tell you how many people I've met on this path of spiritual growth that they are with someone, and one of them starts to evolve and grow in this way, and the other person looks at them like they are crazy and does not understand and is not at that point. And so often they separate, they go different ways, and it happens a lot. And that's why I was so excited and blessed and understood that the reason you had this vision of our 4 boys when you met me is because love at first sight is one way to put it, but really it's fate. It's a plan that we had put together. It's like, we're going to come here and this is what we're going to do together. And so when we met, both of us have said this many times to each other and to people that we know, that it was like a strike of, like a remembering, like, I know you, like we're together.
Yeah, it's like that line in that 10,000 Maniacs song. Forgive me, I don't know the name of the song, but she says, "Fate smiled at destiny." It's poetry. I mean, you can't say it better than that.
Yeah.
When they kind of wink at each other. Yeah. And you go, oh,
right.
Okay, yeah, there you are. And that's how I felt when we first met.
Yeah.
And
Same.
then I realized, that I don't think we can be friends.
We were on the friend path in the beginning,
of course,
which I did not like.
Well, I know, but
I wanted more.
I wanted you in my life. I wanted to be on your podcast when you turned 47. So how did I get there from there, right?
Right.
Get here. So, now we sit here on, Tammy Tuesday, Love, Life, and Purpose. I mean, this is my jam right here.
I was 21 when we met.
Yes, I know.
I'm 47 today. And actually, I was 21, almost, 22. I turned 22 that year. It was 1999.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's like crazy.
I know. And I still say this to this day. I still think you're the coolest person I've ever met, because you're constantly evolving, just like we all are.
Yeah.
We always say life by design. I'm all for being influenced and nudged certain ways, but ultimately you have a plan. You do your life by design, and you can have it. Like in Scrooge. We love that. At the end, he's like,
the best.
Right?
I've referenced that.
I'll make her cry at this. Just on
I think I mentioned
alone.
that on my very first podcast.
She says,
this is interesting. I want to say, before you continue, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this is important because you mentioned Scrooge.
I know how to handle interruptions, yes.
No, but when I said on my very first podcast, this is important because this is, and I will tell you this at the end, but this is going to be my last podcast for a while. We're going to have a little pause.
Ooh, we're bookending.
So this is interesting because you mentioned the Scrooge thing on my very first podcast for Tammy Tuesday. I referenced what you're talking about in Scrooged when Bill Murray does his thing. So keep going.
Okay, so at the end when he says, you can have it. You can have it every day if you want it, by design.
Exactly. Because we're manifestors.
We are absolute manifestors. And boys, listen, when I remind you that I'm your creator, it's an absolute compliment and a gift, because this is what we did. Before I even met your mom, then we came together and we decided, well, I want to have a big family. Let's go create some human beings. And we literally created you out of thin air. I mean, it's a little more technical than that, but we created you, and here you are now, and we couldn't be more happy.
Well, by the way, you all had a huge hand in us creating you, because if you didn't want to be created and part of this experience, you wouldn't have chosen us. So for that, I'm grateful. No,
absolutely. And I mean, we could go on a deep dive on this all day. I mean, I think we could talk about this for 3 or 4 hours, and I know we have. It's just that these physical bodies are such a finite time. You really can't get too attached, I've always told the boys about, you come into this world and you have a toolbox. You're born with your toolbox. It's yours. It's like your genetic code. And when you're young, you open it and you have a certain amount of tools in there. And you look, and as you evolve and you grow, you realize, I think I need to go and get a hammer. I think I might need to go and get a saw. You start realizing these tools that you need. And and as you evolve, you want to be in love with your toolbox. You want to see your toolbox and be so proud of it, because that is you. That's who you're creating. You're creating yourself. You're evolving. So you go back in your toolbox and you just go, man. And this is how I want you guys to feel. I want you to look at your toolbox and go, man, I really like this guy. I like this guy. You know, like I've always said to you and the boys about when you're manifesting, when you're creating your life, whether it be a father, husband, wife, mother, son, daughter, grandparent, I always say, you close your eyes and tell me, what does it look like? Like, okay, you want to be a great dad?
You have always said that.
Okay, close your eyes. What does it look like? And what happens is it forces you mentally to go, oh, well, what do you mean? What does it look like? I'm talking about the daily operations of going about it. You want to be a good husband? What does that look like to you? And you have to sit, like literally meditation's fantastic, but this one's really simple. You literally just close your eyes and you envision, okay, what would being a good husband look like? What would I need to do on a daily basis? You know, how do I bring joy to that person? You know, and we were talking about how we're on our own journeys, and that should be the most exciting thing. And you talked about it. Couples sometimes don't know how to evolve. We've joked all the time that we've been married 22 years and we feel like we've been in 4 marriages.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Or more.
And that's a compliment, or more. I think maybe 5.
Yeah. At this point.
Because things have evolved. Your mother and I weren't like this when we were, see, I'm talking to the boys now. I have a feeling there's a few more out there watching this, but you realize that as you're evolving, you need to communicate those things. That's why I think, and you know me, I blame men more than I ever blame women. I blame men not having the mental fortitude to acknowledge that their wife, their spouse, is evolving and wanting to do something different with their life, and they lose it. They don't know how to identify with that because they're attaching like physical, their own egos to it. And I think that's where men miss it a lot, is that you should be there to encourage your partner, the person you're going through life with, because she's going to turn around and do the same thing for you. You're literally showing her how to engage with you. And if you throw your hands up and go, oh, I don't understand it. You know, what happened to fun Susie from college? Well, she's evolving, just like we all are. And eventually, we're going to return back to where we came from, our spiritual realm that we resided in our entire existence.
Which is really what we are.
Which is all that we are, you know, and we're all energy, and it's all love. I mean, look, I could go on a deep, deep dive on the things that I find incorrect with the Bible. With the
That was something I want you to talk about that, because you mentioned that a lot when we first met, because I was never a Bible person. I'm still not technically a Bible person. I believe in the Bible. I love the stories in the Bible, but I have always said it's truly not inclusive, and I've done my own work and deep dive on that. But before I did my own deep work on that, you always mentioned that.
Well, I just
talk about that, because you read the Bible cover to cover. I don't know a lot of people that read the Bible cover to cover.
Through it. I still have mine. I still go through it. No, and this could upset some people. All I'm really trying to point out is just the historical facts that all of the books of the Bible, some of them were not included. The Book of Thomas is fantastic. Book of Thomas is one that should be a mandatory read, because it literally is the teachings of Jesus saying, listen, you are part of the Creator. The Creator is part of you. You have a direct connection with Him. You're not required to go and worship somewhere where you have to repent for these sins, and then now you're being allowed in.
Nothing outside of you has to do with the relationship.
Nothing, no. And in fact, when you look at it, 300 AD, Constantine gets a group of men together, no women. That's why Magdalene Gospel is not in there. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. It's just not a complete body of work. So you have to kind of expand yourself and realize that, look, I'm not going to follow Google off a cliff either.
Yeah, you say that a lot too.
So I'm not going to necessarily take any one book and say, well, this is it, and this is all I'm going to read, and I'm just going to have my tunnel vision. So I think spirituality far more transcends. I think it really connects all the religions. So,
true.
You know, I had mentioned to you about Book of Thomas, but mostly I think that all of these books that have been written throughout the history of the world, we're not just talking about the Bible here anymore.
And not just Christianity specifically.
Not at all. We're talking about every book ever known to man. You'd need AI to download it and install it. they're all left behind as tools and references for
tools, more for tools for your tool belt.
Absolutely, for your toolbox. I like belt too. You can have a tool belt. That's for like excursions. But then you have your sacred toolbox.
Like my big gold chest.
Absolutely, your hope chest. Yeah.
It's not hope chest.
It's
memory chest.
Memory chest. I get lost. Sorry. All I know is we've carried that thing along. I think it weighs 500 pounds. I know because Jake and I lift it from location to location. But it has everything in there, which is so ironic because all of those earthly belongings don't mean anything.
Nope.
And won't mean anything to you, especially once you move on. And on the topic of having children. I've always been fascinated by the concept of you and I are here in Eden, essentially, right? We're in a version of heaven here where we can create any kind of life we want, do anything we want. We've got the world at our fingertips, literally. And it's such a beautiful place that we want to bring other people here. Mm-hmm. And so we say, you know what? Let's bring these 4 guys. Let's bring 4 kids here. And then the kids get old enough, and they're like, Dad, this is wonderful. What a great experience. And then you have to tell them that you brought them here to die.
Right.
And that's a tough one, but it's what you sign up for.
And to have pain and suffering, because
Yes.
it's not an easy place to be.
Yes, and the Bible talks a lot about that as well. All religions talk about that.
Well, but that's truly all perspective. In fact, I want to say something to your point about bringing these children into the world, because there are a lot of people out there that say, how could I bring someone into this place?
Oh, yeah. It's typically based on politics or something lame.
Right, but to me, and how I believe and what I know to be true for myself and my existence, is that actually when you choose to bring someone into this place, it's not a curse for them. It's just a perspective. It's just an experience. So you think this world's a terrible place. We're going to blow each other up. It's war. It's hate. It's all these things. I'm not saying those things aren't real. They are. But it's all about your perspective in those things. Mm-hmm. Where are the gifts? Where are the beauty in those things? Where in your adversities in life and in the world that aren't even necessarily in your own direct bubble, how can you change your perspective in such a way that you see them as powerful tools and gifts and grow from those things? So when you bring someone into this world, you think, oh, how could I do that? Well, that's a perspective. It's just a perspective. So if you can look at it from another angle, I'm talking to people that are younger out there, because there's a lot of younger generations that truly feel this way very strongly.
What is the median age on your podcast? Have you done the math yet?
I don't know.
Because I know I'm bringing it up, but
I don't know.
But you've had a lot.
It's all over the map.
Yeah, I mean, you've had.
Yeah, it's all over the map. I mean, I have some of our boys' friends that these are people that just I know of.
Yeah.
There's lots of people I have no idea who they are, but they're young people, and some of those young people are included in what I'm talking about. I'm not saying that those specific people are in this group, but there are people in that age group that do feel this way, and I've heard them say it, on a podcast or people I don't know. Mm-hmm. So I know it is a feeling, and that it's just, if there's one thing I could shed light on specific to this topic, it's maybe just change your perspective a little bit, because, and I'm not saying not everybody's meant to have children, and that may be part of your path that you chose before you got here. There's lots of things at play here. Mm-hmm. But on the big picture and where your fear is coming in, fear is not real. So if you're doing anything, any decision you make, if it is based on fear, you're missing something. That all that needs is a perspective shift, and it might change for you. So it's just an important point that I like to bring up, because there are people that are afraid mm-hmm. to do that. And that may not be part of your path, but make sure that you choose not to do that, not based on fear, based on what you know, what you feel, who you are. That's it. Not on fear, because that doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah, no. And I think what we're talking about here too is faith.
Yeah.
Is, having faith. And sometimes you get the question, well, if I can't see it, feel it, touch it, it's typically an engineer. If any engineers are out there, I apologize. People that physically need to touch or feel something, they're very connected to the physical world. And if it's not mathematically provable, then, black holes will blow their mind, right? So I love that movie Contact. Mm-hmm. I mean, mm-hmm. everyone loves that movie Contact, right? There's a bunch of iconic lines in there, but one of my favorite is with Matthew McConaughey is at that dinner party with her, with Jodie Foster's character, and they walk outside. and they're having this philosophical debate. She's a scientist, he's a theologian. There and Matthew McConaughey, obviously great writing. I could have delivered these lines, but he literally he says okay, and she rattles off something scientific about how she needs an equation and blah 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 and stars in the sky and something, and he goes, well, let me ask you something. Do you love your father? And she unequivocally says, yes. I mean, how dare you ask me that? Of course I do. And then he goes, can you prove it? Mm-hmm. And then she kind of loses herself in, well, no, it's a feeling. Okay, so now we're talking about something that's not tangible, that can't be proved with math. I mean, who loves their daddy? I mean, how many times do I say this? I mean, like, it's a real thing. So I think what we're talking about here is faith. And since we're talking about context, seeing as I brought it up, I see how it is
a great movie. I love that movie.
One of my favorite ones is when Jodie Foster, gets sent and meets this being, this other race from across the universe, and she's like, "Well, I don't understand. Like, what's next? Why did you even create this? What is it?" He goes, "We're not sure. It was here." Once again, books left behind,
Ooh,
tools.
I have goosebumps when you said that.
I'll give you a lot of those. And literally tools left behind, books, literature left behind. He goes, it was left behind, we're not sure. But one thing we have found out is that in all the space, in all of this universe, the only thing that makes this enjoyable and bearable is each other. Is each other. Remember, he says that. Yeah. He says each other. And then, of course, Jodie Foster's character is just mesmerized by it. But then her other great line when she's doing that trip, right, through the wormhole, is she says they should have sent a poet. I always love that. She goes, because she's a scientist. She can't really describe the beauty that she's seen. And
words can't do it.
Words can't do it.
Not even a poet could do it. Honestly, that's just what I say. It's like you need to telepathically just exchange what it is that you're feeling, because it's words. Screw that up. They don't convey what it is for you.
Should have sent a poet. And I borrowed that line numerous times. We've been doing something like we were skiing, and remember that we were taking like the last run of the day, and the sun was starting to come over, and it was absolutely stunning, gorgeous. I think we were at Big Sky. And I didn't have any words, so I just was like,
sometimes you just don't need words.
I remember I said, we should be skiing with a poet right now, because he would be like, okay, hold on. All right, here it is. And then, and then waterworks. Yeah.
No, it's true. Words are a funny thing. I've talked about that a lot.
Faith. It just goes back to
faith. It's a feeling. It's an energy.
Feeling.
It's an energy. Because that's all we are. We're energetic beings.
It is. We're only made of love. I'm a big fan of there's no such thing as hell. That shit was made up to control the masses.
Let's talk about that, because I love this topic.
Hell. There is none.
So this is where, when I talk about the Bible, and again, all respect to the Bible, because I do tremendously respect the book. However,
great book.
It does reference that as well. And I feel, to me, that, and I've said this my whole life, like even when I was a child, if you say you're going to go to hell, it's like, how can I go somewhere that doesn't exist for me?
How does that?
And if there's judgment behind that, truly, the only judgment there is of ourselves. There is no almighty being judging us for what we've done or who we are. It's us doing that. So we are our judge. And honestly, that's not even necessary. That keeps us on our moral compass. But truly, when you are what you are, your true being, your true light, that's not necessary, because there is none of that going on.
Yeah, and as I've always told you, hell doesn't pass the logic test. I mean, I'm using math here. I'm just telling you, it doesn't pass the logic test. We're made of love. Any look around you. I mean, love is all there is, and that's all you're going to find in the end. And if you don't agree with me, keep it to yourself, because I don't care. But also, I'll prove it to you later.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll prove it to you later. Well, I'll see you on the other side, and you'll be like, wow.
Well, I referenced this several times here, but I'll mention it again if you didn't catch it when you've listened before. The movie with Robin Williams, What Dreams May Come.
Oh yeah, that's like off the radar movie.
I think that movie does such a wonderful visual display of what I think does happen when we pass. So people that are in fear that there is hell, and they think, well, gosh, if I don't repent, if I don't, admit to my sins or, confess my sin. Well, truly, sin is just denying yourself of yourself, which is God to me. So when you do that, that's the only sin there is. And I do feel like the Bible does mean that. But I think that it's misconstrued on what's not included to actually convey the entire point. But my point in saying that is I think that movie does such a nice job, because in the movie, if you see it, spoiler alert, or if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, the wife, who Robin Williams, he passes first, and he is in his heaven that he's created. He's in a wonderland of joy and happy, and he's connecting with the people that he loves, and because he was open to receiving that when he passed. His wife, who was miserable and ended up committing suicide tragically because she was so lost in her sorrow from losing her children and her husband, she felt that there was this dark side that would happen. And that's exactly where she ended up when she crossed over. But the thing that's so ironic about it, and this is what the movie does such a great job of displaying, is that all she needed was to change her perspective. And she was immediately lifted out of that, because she created that for herself. She created this hell that she was in.
Because we're creators. And
exactly.
They did do a good job
It was the best way to show it, I thought.
It's a radar movie that a lot of people haven't seen.
Well, and it's ironic, too. Don't you find it ironic that Robin Williams, and he's been talked about for a long time since he's passed in spiritual circles, that he's shown up. And I think that he had a huge impact on this world in a beautiful way. And he actually ended up ending his own life. And so I do hope that when that happened for him, that he experienced what he knew he could create. I believe that he did. Just that feels right in my heart, but I don't know. His experience is his experience. But it's amazing that he did a film like that, knowing that that's where he, not knowing, or maybe knowing unconsciously.
Maybe it was on purpose.
Exactly.
Maybe that's the tool, the book that gets left behind. All of these things are breadcrumbs for all of us.
Breadcrumbs.
Yes, absolutely.
Totally. They keep us on this path. So I want to talk about, because you had this, we talked about your vision of our children, because I think this is a big thing, because we do have visions of things. And this clearly was a vision that you had. You've talked about it to me many times. Because this is a real thing for people. When you do come across someone in your path, and I've talked about when people come into your path and when they leave your path, they're there for a reason. And even in relationships, when one person is on this wavelength and the other one is on this frequency, and you split ways, there's reasons for that. It's not a bad thing when people get divorced. It's not a bad thing when people separate. It's part of their path, right? There's no right or wrong, truly, in any of that. But what I find interesting is that there are times when you do meet someone, and I'm not saying necessarily romantic someone, I mean just a person in your path, a friend, or even a sibling. All of a sudden you realize, wow. Or maybe it's someone that you met at work, and you're like, wow, you think that's really interesting. All these coincidences, right? Coincidences, which there really aren't any. These are those moments of fate when you have chosen this path and you've intersected at that moment. And I believe that when you and I, literally, you knocked on my door and I opened the door, it was like a strike of lightning, because it was like an instant remembrance and a knowing.
Download through all of this.
Exactly. It was like, okay, this is really interesting. Why am I feeling so pulled to this person who you had me laughing immediately? And that's been a huge piece of our relationship, which we're going to talk about our relationship too. Laughter is huge.
Yes. And there's just certain, like, you look at your toolbox and you have these certain skill sets that even you're surprised by. The movie Good Will Hunting, great movie, another Robin Williams
Yeah, we're
movie.
big into movies.
He won an Academy Award for that.
Yeah.
An Oscar. So, yeah, in that movie, I love the scene where he's talking to, is it Mimi Driver, the actress?
Minnie Driver.
Minnie. Sorry, Minnie, I screwed up your name. He's talking to her, and she's busy doing her math homework. And he goes, come on, let's go do something fun. She's like, I have to do this. I have to learn this. And he goes, just let me do it for you real quick. Give it to me. They're sitting outside in, I think it's Quincy Square in Boston. And great line. He goes, and this sums up a lot of my life, honestly. She goes, how are you able to do this? How are you able to do this? I don't get it. And he goes, well, here's the thing. He goes, I can't hit the ball out of Fenway. I look at a piano, I see chopsticks. But when it comes to this, I can just play, you know, and there's certain things in my toolbox, in my skill set. I mean, I can still hit a serve 120. Don't try me. There's just certain things that I can just play. I can just do. And I would say comedy, I just find everything funny. And I don't even care if other people don't find it funny. You
do, and you get a laugh.
I mean, my God, there's so much to laugh about in life.
I know.
I mean, there's so many lighthearted moments.
This is a funny place.
And I just find so many things so damn funny all the time.
Yeah, I know.
And so when it comes to that kind of stuff, I just play, and that's why we laugh all the time.
Yeah, we laugh. Well, and that goes to the point of the relationship. That is such a huge magical key in our relationship is laughter. We laugh a lot. I mean, it's like you can't take things too seriously, even when you're like in a moment. Both of us have had this, and one of us is like, we can pull the other one out by something that makes us laugh.
Oh, yeah. We'll be broken down on the side of the road.
We've been in so many scenarios.
Just like, you can't even believe this, right? But the best part is,
oh my gosh,
how often have I always said, especially to the boys, I'm like, guys, I've had fantastic luck.
Yes.
Like, fortuitous, my guardian angels, they're a real thing. The other night, we come around the corner, it's right there.
You create that, though.
You do, you create that.
You created it.
It was not there.
No.
I think it was just it was put there for me. We left, and we used it, we left, and then it was disappeared. I mean,
I know.
It happens. So once again, going back to Scrooge, you can have it every day.
Yes.
If you want it, if you believe it. So these things, yes. I think that, going back to what you were saying about laughter and there's just so much to be, there's endless amounts.
It's perspective.
You always tell me I should write material.
Yes, I do. You come up with this is one of the things I love that you do. And I encourage, if you know this man, please encourage him to do this, because he could be one of the best SNL writers there ever was. He comes up with these funny, like, we'll be in a life scenario of something that's just ridiculous and silly, and like, this is really happening, because of course that's what those skits are based on.
Real life is the
best.
best.
That's what those
humor.
skits are based on.
I mean, real life's the best.
It is. That's the funniest tool we have.
Yes.
And so we're presented with so many opportunities, right? With this finding, again, perspective. If you find it funny, the humor's there if you choose to see it. And so you do that all the time with some scenario, like, oh my gosh, I could totally spin this. And then you come up with this whole dialogue of things that are happening in this one little setting. And
it's a skit.
It would be hysterical because it's so real, but yet so ridiculous at the same time. Again, your perspective is just, you see the comedy in it.
Yeah. It's like, I guess my version would be SNL with all the BS politics. I mean, politics can literally just shove it. There's no purpose. Just turn off the TVs, and let's get on with making new memories. My dad's always been great at that. He's definitely instilled some gems on me. And my dad, regardless of what's happening, he loves to say, hey, let's get busy making new memories. Yeah. You know? I mean, because that's really all we have time to do.
Yeah.
And
let's talk about your parents. I want to talk to you about your parents for a minute.
Do you have any tissue? Where's the tissue?
So, based on who you have always been, you've had influences in your life, and your parents certainly are one of them. And I mean your mom and your dad in different ways.
I've had lots of them.
Well, you've had step-parents too. But I want to talk about how they have influenced you in so many ways, because you had a really interesting upbringing. Your parents split, and you were all over the country. And I think a lot of that, again, even though they were tough times, were huge gifts for you. In fact, I think that they ignited your remembrance of how funny you think things are. And also your quick wit, and you're able to approach, you don't know strangers. I mean, you could walk into a room of complete strangers and have 5 friends in 5 minutes, because you're so good with people, and you disarm people, and you make yourself feel approachable. And it's such a gift, Eric. Like, it blows my mind how good you are at that. I've been blown away since the day I met you when I first saw it.
Yeah, you've had a front row seat for that.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable.
That goes back, and this is no brag in any way. It's just one of the things that I can play. I can just play that it just comes natural to me. It's very easy, you know. And I've told you for years that I think Forrest Gump would be the best example. That movie is kind of how I feel like I've lived my life. I've been all over the place and been in these completely unconnected scenarios all around the country, specifically about how I grew up. I suppose you're asking about
just how you
so first through third grade. Well, first of all, my parents were divorced when we were in Charleston, South Carolina, and then
and you were how old?
I was what would I have been? Can I phone a dad right now? Can I phone a friend?
Just guess.
What would I have been?
Roughly
7.
Okay.
6.
And Corey was 2 years older than you.
Corey would have been 2 years older than me. I'm sure I'm going to get a correction text on this one, but we can edit all this. This is going to be heavily redacted, by the way. This whole podcast is going to be very, very choppy, almost like a Biden statement. Can I say politics in here? Is it?
We don't talk about Bruno.
We'll edit that out. So, my dad was in the military, and then my second father came into my life, my overbearing stepfather, Tom Harvey. Lived first through third grade in South Carolina, and then fourth grade I went to Sacramento to live with my father and his new wife, my second mom. And then from there we lived in 2 different cities, 2 different schools, and then we moved to Dobson Ranch here in Mesa, Arizona for 5th grade. That was with my second mom, as I refer to her as, Mary. And then 6th grade, we moved back. I went back to live with my mom and stepfather in Summerville, South Carolina for 6th and 7th grade. And then 8th through 12th, we were in upstate New York in Clifton Park. So just bouncing around. And this is before cell phones. This is when you got a handful of dimes and you're in the airport system. And you now look back and realize why you did a 12-hour layover in Atlanta or an 11-hour layover in Newark, because the flights were cheap. That's how you do it. So, growing up that way, you were constantly walking into classrooms where you knew no one, and just had to
reinvent yourself.
You just had to be on your toes, really. You had to be quick-witted. You had to figure out how to navigate this new group of people where you had no friends at all. You would immediately sit by yourself instantly in the cafeteria the first couple weeks, really, because you didn't know anybody. You had just moved from Arizona or California or South Carolina. I was in upstate New York saying y'all. That didn't work very well. So I got rid of that quick. And then April 10th, 1990, my dad married Marlis, my third mom. And she's been a forever staple in my life ever since then. Well, before then. But they got married, and they've been married ever since. And they've had the most influence on me, definitely.
Yeah.
Rick and Marlis fellows, definitely. And Art by Marlis, little plug there.
Oh, she's an amazing artist.
Check her out. She's ridiculous. I still can't believe I think she's cloned herself, and one's out there painting while she's relaxing.
Maybe.
Nobody can figure out the math. I think she might have like an alien counterpart that's doing it, because it's exceptional what she's done. And I had a front row seat for it, because I watched her put herself through school and really learn the trade. And then, fantastic.
Again, part of her toolbox.
Oh, her tool.
This is how she expresses.
I would love to see.
It's an amazing gift, and so beautiful.
I would love to look in her toolbox, because she's got a lot of tools in there.
Oh,
that lady, and she also had 4 kids. God bless her. All great siblings of mine. But yeah, my mother had a different relationship with her. She wasn't exactly the most nurturing mom. I think if she had to do it over again, she probably would have chosen a better second husband, I think, potentially. So, and my brother left, and he went away to college. So I spent a lot of years with just those 2, and I didn't find that to be my most exciting or most fun years, I suppose. But I can tell you that parents do have an influence on their children, but we've discussed this. They do, And they really don't in a lot of ways, because we look at our boys and we know scientifically that you're the closest genetic match by 25% to a sibling. So like if we look at any one of our kids, we know that they're not more like you, more like me. We do see similarities in there, but they're more like each other than anyone else. And like, as we've experienced, our boys have made all their own decisions. I mean, they've made their own life decisions. We've had input, and any parent out there knows this. You give your input. You're there to support. You're there to catch them when they fall.
And you teach them not to die, hopefully.
Yes. Well, you're on suicide watch the first couple of years.
We call it homicide watch. Either they're going to kill themselves or someone else.
Sticking stuff in outlets. And
so
now you're just in, don't do stupid shit mode, right? Your kids are like, well, yeah, what was the latest one? I'm going to rent skis in Tempe, and I'm going to haul them all the way up to the hill. And then I'm going to ski all day and then haul those nasty-ass pair all the way back down the hill. Keep it in mind, if you have a problem with your equipment in any way, they're not going to touch it up on the hill. Guys, save yourself the $4 and just rent your stuff at the hill. That's a small little microcosm of what you do as you get older. Now we're an advisory committee, really. Is what we do. We just advise.
Still have a couple young kids. We only have 2 adult children.
Yeah, but Brody and Logan, they've got their own opinions.
That's for sure.
They're on their way. Those guys are awesome, and I mean, all of our boys are doing fantastic. But back to parenting, you do the best you can, and then you wish them well, and I suppose that is a great segue into Tammy. Let me ask you some questions. Tell me about your upbringing. Tell me about all of your fathers and all of your mothers. Now you have to discuss.
Well, I did just have my dad on here.
You got to discuss all of the marriages.
All of the marriages? Oh, we already did. My dad mentioned that.
Oh, you did? Okay, we'll put a link. There's a link at the bottom of this. If you can just click on that link.
And my dad's going to laugh when he hears this because he loves Eric, by the way.
And by the way, you just took my...
Sorry.
I was just going to say, could not have asked for a better father-in-law. This man is fantastic. Fantastic human being, and spiritual and sweet. And when he stayed at our house...
when Nikki died?
Yes. When he stayed at our house, when he went to leave that morning, I got up. I told him I'd be up, and he came around, and your dad's the right amount of stoic too around his son-in-law. He's like, well, Eric, thank you so much, and thanks for having me, and I got to hit the road and go catch my flight. And he walked out the front door, and he walked right to the corner before he turned, and he just stopped. And I thought he'd forgotten something. I'm standing there with the door open, and he turns and looks back at me, and he goes, Eric, I love you. And I'm like, well, I love you too. And that was probably a good opportunity to hug it out. I don't know, maybe next time. But that's
not that you guys don't hug, but
the thing is like, you can't pick your father-in-law. I couldn't pick all your siblings who are fantastic. Your mother's dynamite.
My mother said the same thing to you recently.
She did. I can honestly tell you, I have a very, very good, I call it working relationship with your parents. They're wonderful human beings, but it shouldn't surprise me, right? Because I'm madly in love with you, and I love the influence they have on you. They're fantastic. So there's a plug for that.
Yeah.
So
I have said for a long time, and I've said this specifically here, that I am grateful to my parents for the influence that they had on me, specifically in the spiritual space, as to everything is possible, and to be open to knowing that and learning that and growing with that, because a lot of people don't get that exposure in life, and I was blessed to have that from the beginning. So when my true spiritual life became awake, it was overwhelming, I think, like it is for many, but it was also not shocking, and it was, wait a minute, I remember this, and there's something to this, and this isn't crazy, this is real, and I'm okay, and having been exposed to some of those things as a child. So for that, I'm grateful. I mean, really, truly grateful to both of them for that, because they have had a huge impact on my path.
I think one of the greatest gifts they gave you was not moving all over the country.
Right.
You're a Scottsdale girl. You grew up here. we often joke and kid.
6th generation native.
You know, the other day when you called me in tears that on your way home you drove past your childhood home.
Oh, this was big.
I
yeah,
know.
for me.
Do you have tissue? You had just merely driven by there on the way home, and you called me in tears over it. And my response back, you know, once again finding things funny, I said, "Honey, I am very happy for you that you have a childhood home."
We do. It was a huge staple.
Because I think I lived in 20 different homes.
Yeah, we did. That was sad. Well, because that home specifically was my grandparents' house that my mother grew up in.
Bought it in 56.
Yes, it had a bomb shelter, which we called the dungeon, which was so freaking badass. I
This
love
was
that.
in
I mean, it was just a
Arcadia.
cool. This is in Arcadia in Scottsdale here, Scottsdale, Phoenix. And it was such a cool home, and it was built in the 50s where it was all orange. Back in the day, if you're from here in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arcadia really was just a bunch of orange groves and farm ranch style homes with big lots. Nothing fancy. Today it's got like mega mansions, and you can't believe the wealth that's in there.
They're
It's
going to probably
crazy.
build a $3 million home on that lot.
Oh, it's crazy. And the lot is tiny. It's a third of an acre. Some of the lots are like huge, at least 3/4, maybe an acre, some of them, because they're really big lots. But it was like an irrigation system and, you know, very basic. But it was the coolest thing about that house was that it had a bomb shelter, which this should tell you the times. They built a bomb shelter in the back because we were in that time.
Yeah, because nothing will save you from a nuclear blast like being 6 feet underground.
Well, but the coolest thing growing up in that house was that it was true. It was basically became a giant playroom for us kids. And it was, but we had the stuff. We had rice and honey and beans and all the things to survive, you know, a nuclear holocaust.
Rice and honey and beans. I love it.
But they were in these huge buckets. I remember growing up with them, but it became this playroom. But anyway, the dungeon was really cool. It was just a childhood memory. And I remember just through the years, we drive by there because we sold the home. When my parents split, we sold the home. And it's always been a huge just memory for us because we loved that house. And when I literally drove by there a couple days ago to visiting a friend who's in Arcadia, still lives in Arcadia, and I drove by there and I was like, oh my gosh, it's gone. Now, most of the homes in that neighborhood now have been dozed. So this was not shocking, but it was yet like heartbreaking because you see the home that you have all these memories of and history and just so much there. And when it's gone, it's just, there's something about it. Again, this is just our physical world. We put so much meaning into things that are physical, which really it's kind of silly in the big picture, but they're real. And I was sad. And I texted my mom and all my siblings and my parents that day. And I said, oh my gosh, our house is gone. And everybody had the same response. And really, this is actually an important point that's coming to me right now, is that it's not about the physical things in our life. It's the memories that they've created and what meaning and energy they hold. Because that physical place, even though there is no space and time, it's kind of all the time. But in this earthly realm, it's very real, and the physical things have meaning and purpose for us, and they keep us on different paths, and they're part of our experience, and they do have meaning because they hold energy, that the happy memories, even the sad memories, the scared memories, all the things that come with the memories that go with a particular place or a particular item or a person or whatever it is, they do have meaning in your life.
Well, we've talked about this. This is why you bury people and you put up a tombstone, so there's now a place to go to essentially commemorate them, and because you can't go back to their childhood home, that'll probably get bulldozed.
Right.
So
they always say you're going to live in it. A stranger's going to live in your house.
Well, you know, and I've always said this for years. Look, when I pass, please don't go back and commemorate that day or that intersection, that location, or the hospital room I died in. People never seem to do that, right? Sure. So, because that wouldn't have been my favorite day. Please celebrate my birthday and go ski or go do something fun that I would enjoy. That's where you'll find my energy. So we've always talked about this. I don't want to get in a master debate with people over this because, you know, oh, well, I have to remember, you know, the day he died and what happened. That's fine, but I'm just saying for me, I've never understood that. I don't think that if you had that person back for 5 minutes, they would say, oh, yeah, this is the spot. No. I've had way better birthdays.
Well, so I want to go somewhere else with this topic. So, because you've had recent experiences, too, in the metaphysical with mediums around your mom, because your mom has passed. And
oh, yes.
I want to talk about that because she did come out. I mean, speaking about, like, those weren't your fondest memories in life, but she has come through since then and has shared, more about that. Like when you pass on, you're back. I mean, it's like all of a sudden everything you remember really
You're
what
home.
you are. You're home,
Yeah.
and you remember what you are and who you are. And it's like, okay, I go back to the light, which is what I am, right? So, but when she came through, that was a powerful thing.
Yeah, and I don't know, there's a lot of, I don't think there's a lot of podcasts that maybe go into this kind of deep dive, but for Tammy and I, this is like normal
conversation,
everyday conversation, because one of our best friends in the whole world is a very, very famous medium. Are we allowed to say?
She was on here, yeah.
Yeah, Alison Dubois. She's my favorite Aquarius, and I'm her favorite Aquarius. It's a real thing. But she's a lovely human being. Absolutely love her husband, Joe. Got a man crush on that dude. He's awesome. Love being around them. Great energy around them. So these types of conversations are normal. And so, yes, so talking with...
Well, you did Linda and Tanya. You've actually seen two.
Yeah.
That have both been on here too.
Oh, no, and they were fascinating. And ultimately, my mother came through instantly and was very quick to point out that there is no regret. When your energy passes, you don't take fear with you. You don't take regret with you. That's the beauty of it all. But she did acknowledge that she could have done things a bit differently while she was here. And she went out of her way to point out that my father is still her greatest achievement, I suppose would be the word, greatest experience in life, and that she was very adamant through this medium. This medium said, you really, really stay close to your father and keep an eye on him for me. This is my mom, essentially, reminding me of these things, which that's an easy one. I love the guy.
Your dad is amazing. He's one of the best humans on this planet.
I can't. I've lost track of how many guys have told me over the years, like, dude, I wish that was my dad.
Really, truly, your dad is.
Yeah.
When I met that father-in-law, I was like, oh my gosh, I hit the lottery.
Yeah, he's
so amazing.
Yeah,
such a special, kind heart. Love him.
Yeah, the best
so
dad
much.
you could hope for, and so. So that was that was very helpful. I enjoyed hearing that, especially, my mom being so adamant about everything. And then keep in mind, you guys, this is stuff that I don't readily share with people or just start a common conversation. I mean, I own a real estate company. I'm not going to bring my medium in, although that wouldn't be a bad idea. When you're looking for a house, I'm like, here, guys,
you get a whole new type of clientele.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, you show me another buyer rep that brings a medium in. Here, we're going to help you find your home.
Maybe you go after people that have lost people, are moving on from an estate.
Okay, next podcast. I like it.
Maybe that's our next spin.
That could be huge.
Okay, guys, I want to hear if there's any votes. I've been saying I think Eric and I would have a really fun podcast about a lot of things that we talk about. If you vote yes, just make a note, because I think it'd be really fun for Eric and I to do a podcast, because we are going to pause on this podcast for a little while. And I'm not sure what's coming next, but I know my loyal listeners, I just want you to know that. But I'm just going to throw that in.
And I can tell you one of the most enjoyable qualities of a podcast is that you can get all of your points out. Nobody's asking you any questions. And you can just go and you can stay on point, because you can get distracted easily when you're discussing different topics and you forget something very, very important. I do quite enjoy, I definitely enjoy, well, obviously talking and being with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we did a joint podcast together,
that'd be fun.
It'd be super fun. I don't even care if anybody watched it.
Well, that's the thing. We have these kind of conversations anyway.
We do. We have them anyway. And so we might just do it from bed. You know what I mean? I'll just wake you up with coffee and the light will be on. You'll be like, oh, I'll be like, honey, we're live streaming. Hi, everyone.
Do that too.
Here you go, sweetie.
Oh, great.
Right? It's like we're live right now.
Wait, everybody pause. She's got to go brush her teeth.
I'm like, Tammy, all 18 people are watching right now. So I think 4 of which are our boys. So there's some potential there in the future. But, on that topic, I do find it fascinating to read about NDEs.
Let's talk about that, because you are very fascinated in NDEs.
Near-death experiences. I like reading about them because they're a really cool way to digest information that is completely unbiased. The people aren't selling anything. They're just merely telling you about after they had passed and before they were revived, their experiences, and they're all the same, like across the board. Go online, read about them. They're fascinating. In fact, I knew you'd bring this up, even though I brought it up, so I get the point for that, because we're going to go back to the whole point system. It's complicated. But there's recently one that I read that I really enjoyed, and I have a couple excerpts. Am I allowed to?
Of course.
Can I phone a friend?
For sure.
Kind of thing.
I didn't realize you were going to do that.
So,
no, I will say that you have, while you're pulling that up, you have definitely, as we've evolved and gone through more and more of this type of work, you have really had a lot of interest in near-death experiences. When I read that book, which you bought for me when I was hospitalized,
Proof of Heaven.
When
you really should have died.
Yes, exactly.
From that carotid dissection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was sort of a near-death experience of sorts. But anyway, and I've talked about that a little bit here, but when that happened, you did find that book at the store, and I found that really interesting because I read it so many years later. Mm-hmm. And that story specifically, the reason I love that book is because he's a neurosurgeon, brain surgeon, and he, throughout his entire career, had severe doubts about near-death experiences. A lot of neurosurgeons believe, it's just your brain synapses shooting things off that are giving you these visions of lights and tunnels and angels and your past experiences and things, your life flashing before your eyes. This is all just brain synapses going on. And when he had his own experience explaining very much in depth this book about it, he says, I was wrong. I was wrong because his brain was so dead that there was no possible event of that type of thing going on. And every other neurosurgeon that he knew agreed and said, this doesn't make any sense. And it was really interesting. And then when we talked about it, did you read the book? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because I think after I read it, I was like, you got to read this book. And then you have been on this path of NDE. So now your turn.
Yeah. So obviously I found one that I really enjoyed.
Okay.
It just was very insightful. And by no means am I getting a plug or getting paid for plugging this book, because if I was, I would tell you to go buy it. So it's a book called Application of Impossible Things.
Okay.
And it's written by a lady by the name of Natalie Sudman. And she was killed in a blast in her Humvee in Iraq while she was serving over there. It was a roadside bomb. It killed one other person, and it left her seriously injured. She ended up losing an eye and part of her leg. But the point is, while she was essentially clinically dead, she went and described essentially what happened to her, and some of these excerpts, I've got too many here to really dissect, but I think the one I would love to read is she believes after her experience of crossing over and getting her download essentially again of the beauty of everything that she saw on the other side. She literally says, she goes, "Existence beyond the physical is utterly lovely, infused with love and richly fulfilling. I'd honestly prefer to be there." Right? Mm-hmm. Right? And so she goes on to say, she goes, "I believe that the tools offered through books, training programs, individual teachers and gurus, including," she adds, "scientists and clergy, are valuable only up to the point that they're left behind and students become their own teachers."
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Right? So, I
love that. That's perfect.
And literally what she took for it says, she says the one thing she learned is that joy is destroyed when you believe outside circumstances can affect it. Remember how we always say, you can't take my joy. I'm not letting them take my joy. They're not taking my joy. Right?
Right.
And then it says, sometimes joy can be found even within and between difficult experiences.
For sure.
So, it says right here, it says, this is how she ends one of her chapters. She goes, "If you do nothing but enjoy a day, no matter how small and petty it may seem, you've accomplished something valuable. Everything you do, everything you imagine has value and purpose. Every existence has meaning. Every experience contains the potential for joy."
Wow, it's so that's
and
so
this
true.
was her download. And when she came back into her body, she goes, I was in incredible pain. I was
oh my gosh,
damn, I wish I was
dead
back home, right? And then she goes on and writes the book. And I think in a lot of ways, her book was kind of what you're meant to come back and do.
Sure.
So I'm excited about your book.
Yes.
I'm very excited about that.
Yes.
That's another podcast. But the NDEs, I always find them fascinating because they all sing the same tune. Nobody has a different tweak to it. There is no hell. Nobody ever finds. See, these are all physical limitations, right?
But at the same time, I do think that some people have had NADs where there is scary elements to it. But again, that's because that's what they thought was going to happen.
Well, like another famous one. Yeah, you're right. To be fair to that, you're right. A gentleman passed who had zero faith, had lived a completely debaucherous life, and instantly found himself in a dark place. And he said that he felt this light inside of him. He could see this little light inside of him. And all he had to do was call to it. And he said, I remember, this is his near-death experience he's having. He called to the light, and he said instantly, he goes, I was sucked out of this void I had created. And he goes, and as I was essentially entering heaven, and he goes, I could look back and see these other souls that were having the same difficulty, and I remember shouting to them. He said I could see that all of them had this beautiful white light inside of them, and all they had to do was call to it. And he's like, and I'm on my way to heaven, and I'm like, hey man, it's right there, you guys all have it, because that's what we are. We're all just pieces of a greater
source.
Greater creator, source, and we all have it in us limitlessly. Yeah. And so I really like reading them because it's somewhere between a biography and a kind of historical documentary. Yeah. Right? Yep. Where people are just documenting and they go, look, this is what happened. Was my experience, and this is, so you're constantly surrounded by those who passed before you and your guardian angels. And I mean, we're surrounded by energy right now, a lot of it.
Well, and I find it interesting with NDE specifically too, is that people so many of those stories that people come back, almost every single one of them, it seems. I haven't seen, obviously I don't know every single one of them, but I've heard so many where they say, I wanted to stay, and I was told that I need to go back. And I had the choice, even with free will, because we all have free will. That's never taken from us ever, no matter what the scenario is.
That's literally what she says in her NDE. She goes, I was surrounded by this group of spirits that I had known forever. And they all instantly got a download from me and instantly said, you really should go back because you can. Obviously, if you've been vaporized, you're not going back. Because you can and you should. And she goes, but yet I knew infinitely that the choice was always mine. Right. If I wanted to or I didn't.
That's the beautiful thing, is our free will is never taken from us. We always have it, even in that experience. But these souls that have crossed over and come back, it is always their choice, whether they know that or not. That's what I believe, is that it is always their choice to come back. And I believe that the reason they choose to come back is because they want to share these experiences so people can be more enlightened by these stories, to say, is this possible? Like, what does this mean? People that dive into these stories, they're interesting, and it makes you, like she said so beautifully in her what she said in her story was, she said, it basically, you can learn, you can absorb knowledge or information and knowledge from books and gurus and classes, and that's all fine and great, and that's going to keep you on a path, right? But at the end of the day, the only way to stay on any path is to experience these things and to implement them into how you live and what you know and what you understand, because it feels right and real to you. So I find it really interesting when people do crossover that they have that same experience. Like, well, you should probably go back. And I think there's influences to say, you really do want to go back. And I think that we say, oh, you know what? You're right. I do. Because I want to share this. Because why wouldn't I want everyone here in this earthly realm to know this, to remember this?
To remember this, yeah. And I think where people get short-sighted is they look at the date, December 30th, 2024. I mean, the Earth's been here 4 billion years. You know how many civilizations have been here before us? Mm-hmm. We could potentially be the dumbest one. I mean, literally, when you look back throughout the eons of time, but yet we love to claim that, we have the greatest country ever created with a $33 trillion debt. I wouldn't call that being managed all that well. So I think it's interesting when there's just society after society, these books, these things that get passed down. Everybody comes here and needs to be nourished, right? It needs to be nourished with knowledge and, what's at your fingertips, right?
Yeah, exactly. And those are beautiful tools. Mm-hmm. They're beautiful tools.
Back to your toolbox. I'm still looking to add tools.
Oh, yeah. So you're never going to stop adding tools. The tools just generate more and more.
I know. I'm tempted to auction some of mine off. Right? And then I'll just go get another one.
Well, it's infinite, so you can have as many tools as you want.
You
as many tools as you create, you
can have it every day if you want it. It's Scrooge all day long. No, I love that movie.
Are there any topics that we did not cover that you wanted to talk about?
Oh,
NDEs was a big one.
I
know there's endless. We could go on. That's what I'm saying. We could have a podcast and talk about all kinds of stuff.
Why? Do you know how long we've been on?
No, I don't. But I do want to say this because you have built an amazing business. And people that would want to work with you, I want you to have the opportunity to share with them what you do with your real estate company and where they can find you, because you have helped so many people get exactly what they want in a new home and a place to be, and not even just residential. You do all kinds of things. But share with them how they can find you and if they want to tap into your services.
Well, I appreciate that. And should I take the mic and stand? Should I do like a beatbox?
You do whatever you want to do, hon.
Okay, so I own AZ Fellows Real Estate. People know that. A lot of people watching this know that. So I own a real estate company here in Scottsdale. We do lots and lots and lots of residential. We have a lot of off-market properties. I mean, I think this month we've closed a couple off-market already. And we do commercial as well. We're helping a client right now sell 8 residential properties he has here that are rentals, and then we're going to help him buy a commercial building. And that seems to be popular. Those guys like to transition from kind of all over to a commercial, kind of a numbers-only building. But ultimately, I think that where we flourish is we're a service business. So we love to say love all, serve all. And we're a service business. That's where I think real estate agents miss it completely. They want to interject themselves into the transaction with their own opinions. They don't advise their clients accordingly. They have their pictures on their signs. I mean, what are you selling? Are you selling the back-to-back picture? I've never quite understood that. That's why you'll only find my logo when you look, because we're not about selling ourselves. We're supplying a service. And I think that's really what people want, because I built this company based on how I know what I'm looking for. And what I want is I want somebody in my phone. I want an easy button that I can call and ask questions and not get an invoice when I'm done. I just want to call and ask some real estate questions. And then if there's going to be business, then, I always tell people that, we spend about 80-90% of our time answering questions, and then a lot like being a dad. And then 10% of the time doing transactions for people. So it's a service business. And if you can figure that out, then you're going to serve your fellow man well.
Well, another thing that you always say that I love is even when people are buying real estate, you're like, we're just borrowing this.
Oh, I love it. Okay.
I love that you say that. I think that's a huge message for this world.
God, my favorite one, and I hope
we think we own it.
I hope I don't you're not going to send this to any of my clients, right? I hope I don't piss off any clients, but I love these people that talk about all this real estate they own. I own all of this. This is mine. This is all mine. And in comfortable environments, I have said to clients, I go, for how long? Like, how long do you think you'll own that? Because you're not going to live forever, and I guarantee your kids are going to sell all this shit. So we're just here borrowing time. And honestly, if I wasn't doing real estate, I would be in some other service industry. I like helping people.
Yes, you do.
It's just my MO. I'm an Aquarius. So if you appreciate me, you're probably going to have a really good experience.
Well, it's funny. In your years of doing this, which has been many, clients, when they're done with a transaction with you, they're like, well, is this it? They want to be your friend. That goes back to you in a room full of strangers. Like people, when you're at an event where it's like, oh, whatever, you have to be there for whatever the reason is. He's the guy like you want to sit by because he's just fun and he takes things not too seriously and you're laughing and you're joking and you're just a magnet for people. And I just love that about you. And you've done that even for me. Like, we'll go to an event. I've said this before too. We'll be at some event and I am not a person that likes to go to small talk events. And I had to do it for way too long in my business.
She's a Capricorn.
And no, Capricorns are so business. That's where I'm not.
All business.
And that's why I just don't like small talk, but I like more deep, meaningful talks now, clearly. And so we'll go into a space, or there'll be somewhere where we're going to go, and I'm like, do we have to go? And he's like, no, we should go. And every time, I know better.
I get a feeling.
And I listen, and I'm like, all right, we'll go. And every time that happens, and I just trust, my word this year is trust for 2025. Is I trust that, and whenever we do, and I trust that, something amazing happens. Either I meet an amazing new friend, or we have an amazing experience, or some path is crossed in that interaction. We have an interaction that's deep and meaningful, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how did you know? And he's like, I just had a feeling. He doesn't even know it. Or across the room, he'll go to the one person where all of a sudden there is no shallow chit chat. It's like we go straight to the real stuff and we have a meaningful conversation and I meet a great new person.
I think that goes back to you calling me your muse.
Totally.
I'm going to Google that word.
Yeah.
But
you are.
I understand what you mean. Because I do. I've always gotten feelings like that. I just get these like from people in general, but I've never ever really been intimidated by anyone. I mean, like the Forrest Gump style life that I've had. I mean, I played tennis with presidents. Yeah. And traveled all over and met fascinating people, and some of the most powerful people in this state are friends of mine. Yeah. But yet,
no strangers.
I don't know any strangers. No, I could get just about anybody on the phone. But the other side of that is I never do.
No, you're not. Yeah.
These friends of mine that could grant me all kinds of favors, I think they love being friends with me because I don't ask them for shit, and I've always said that to them. They're like, hey, Eric, if you need something, And I'm like, look, man, I'm not going to ask you for anything until I do. And I have yet to do any of those things because I just look at them as, look, the term I've used with you, and maybe it's a bit crude, but all of these people have to wipe their own asses. Except for maybe the uber rich. Jeff Bezos, and these people probably have somebody doing it for them. But the point is, we're all just,
having a human experience.
We're all just having a human experience.
And we're all connected.
Yep.
No one's above anyone else. Nope. We're all just here having an experience.
And as soon as you think your position here in the state is so highbrow, somebody else is going to have that spot after you, and you're going to be just normal Joe. That's
the thing, and I'll say this too, because I've said this before. Comparison's a killer, because honestly, we really are all one. And if there's something that you want, just because it brings you joy, well, go get it. Have it. You can create it. It can be yours. It's all about how you vibrate and how you feel and your frequency and your level of joy.
Well, and that's the thing that we've run into this. We've run into this with friends and family where you'll mention meditation and you'll say, well, why don't you meditate on it and attract it to you? And man, if you can't see it or feel it, sometimes people just can't get their head around it. So I've come up with simple analogies like, well, hold on. Look out the window here. I think the wind's blowing really hard. You see that flag? But I can't see the wind. So that's weird. And I got a better one for you. Why do these two magnets pop together? There's a force happening here that I can't physically see. I don't understand it. It's like caveman logic, right? So if that's the case, what else is going on
that I can't see
around me, and what could I attract to me? And that's the power of manifestation. Anybody who just wants to, the simplest, easiest takeaway from this whole podcast, I really think, is if you want to manifest something, stick with that. You don't like to meditate. You don't want to read the good book. You're not interested in religion or politics. Good for you. Read a book on manifestation.
Totally.
That one it's like reading about how magnets attract each other. And what happens is when you start focusing on that and your energy and you resonate that, we're giant batteries here. I mean, we're resonating a ton of electricity through our bodies. And if you can send that energy out, boom, you'll be shocked at what comes back. All of a sudden it arrives and you go, oh, wow. And then you'll call me and you'll thank me and you'll shoot me a text and be like, hey, Eric, that rocked. I love that book on manifestation.
You know what? It works the opposite way though too.
Yes.
If you're looking and noticing and only seeing all the negativity around you, because there's plenty of that out there, wherever you're focusing on, that's where your energy is going to go. So you're going to get more of that. So that's why I'm saying if you can find, and again, this all comes back down to perspective. If you can shift your perspective on any scenario, even if it's not something that's super favorable to you, when you can recognize that maybe you don't like it, it's not your favorite thing, but you change your perspective and try to find the light in it, because there's light in everything, then all of a sudden you can raise your vibration, you can raise your frequency, and then that magnet brings right everything that you actually are, that's more desirable to you comes. And not even just that, you already have it because you have changed your perspective. You're not seeing the negative side of it. You're seeing, oh, this isn't actually bad. This is actually great. This is a gift. This is a blessing. That right there is the magic, period. Yeah. It changes how everything comes to you.
Yeah, and we actually have code words, lots of them, but one of them's Five and Diner.
Yeah.
And Five and Diner actually came about because Jacob was really young, 5 or 6, and we were having a little birthday party with him over in the pavilions in Scottsdale at the Five and Diner that's no longer there.
I know, that actually went in a fire.
It was a cute place. And it was the day we had just come together right before. Neither of us wanted to go. We were both spitting flames. We're like, I don't want to go. This is going to suck.
Tired, grumpy.
I'm tired, I'm grumpy. And we both just took a second and we're like, okay, let's just change our perspective on it and our attitude about it. And we're not going to let it take our joy, right? All right, let's go. And we had a freaking fantastic time at the Five and Diner. We had
celebrating
a fantastic
his birthday.
party.
Just our little family.
Yeah, Jacob had a great time. He still loves his mommy and daddy to this day. And we loved it. So now we say, and now I think the boys will figure out where that Five and Diner term.
Have they never heard that story?
They might have. But
yeah. No, everything that when we're like, oh, like a happy, like a serendipitous kind of thing, where we're like, oh, this turned out really great, and I really didn't even want to be here. Like you know when you go to the gym sometimes and you're not in the mood, and then you go and you have the best workout of your life. It's like that, like those moments of all of a sudden you're kind of dreading it and you're not really wanting to be there or go or to whatever the thing is, and all of a sudden you go and it's fantastic. We call that a Five and Diner.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I remember in college, I'd not want to play a match, right? I played tennis in college, and I'd just be, and sometimes those were the greatest matches I ever played. Right. I got out there and was like, that's it, I'm going to go pro tomorrow. I mean, and they just happen. But I would change my perspective before I walked on the court.
That's
so I did connect those two. The times I didn't, it did suck. It sucked bad.
It got worse and worse.
More than likely, I think I lost.
Yeah.
Might have won one of those, but with a shitty attitude, you'll get what you put out.
Attitude is free, and attitude is everything. Again, perspective. It's perspective.
Well, that's my beanie that I love wearing.
I know.
Because you gotta have a beanie with this head. Attitude is free. Yeah, attitude is free. So if you just have a good one, you're gonna do just fine. Yes,
and that's something that I am so grateful to you in my life, is that you find the positive in everything. You've always done that. That's your default. That's just who you are at your core. It's who all of us are, but you're really good at living it every day. And I just am so, so grateful, because you've been such a huge influence around that specifically, because you're just like, you find the humor in things, even when they're shitty situations, you find the funny in it. Yeah. And all of a sudden we're laughing and it's not so bad. And then we're like, oh, this is all right. We're going to be fine. You're like, it changes everything. Yeah. It's the best. And it just makes me happy to be with you and be around you all the time. And I love that our kids have that influence in their life.
I appreciate that. I think that makes you very attracted to me, I think, is where we're going with this.
Super.
Is this when we kiss?
Super attractive. Well, I don't know. We'll be kissing on the podcast because we're talking. But
okay, yeah. Is that not appropriate?
But I'm excited about my birthday gift later.
Oh, yes. Yes, ma'am.
So we'll just stop with that.
We'll leave it at that.
Here's what I'm going to say. This episode, and I'm so happy, this is the cherry on top, is to have you here, because I have been wanting you here the entire time I've been doing this past year, and it's been a whole year, and I've committed to this, and it's been so fun. And I'm not saying that the podcasting is over, but I am saying that there may be a little bit of a pause. There may be a little bit of a rebrand. I don't know what's coming next.
Comma in a sentence,
but something
stuff
is coming, and I just hope that those who are loyal listeners and appreciate what you learn and have here, there will be more coming. So be patient and just pay attention, and I will keep you up to date what is next. And I thank you all for being part of this. And if there's other information that you want, you can continue to follow on Instagram and Facebook at Tammy Tuesday Life. And if you're listening to this episode or any of the episodes, you can also watch. They are on YouTube as well, at Tammy Tuesday Life there as well. And we hope you subscribe and listen. And TammyTuesday.com, of course, which grateful to Eric for making that possible for me. Always, always leaving you with so much love and light. And remember, life, love, and purpose, it all begins with you. Peace out.